Are you gonna do it? Okay, we didn't see it. I did it at the beginning. Go back and look when I started doing these green lines, this green foliage. I roll my brush. Why? Because the essence of good painting is the art of making interesting marks. And there, do you see that roll? There's another one. There you go. And rolling your brush makes a really interesting mark. Now the number one element of interestingness, and I say that, I've said this over and over, interesting marks. Well, what's interesting? The number one characteristic is variety. So I move my brush in all different manner. I move my brush in different ways. I use many different kinds of brushes. Have you ever wondered why do artists use so many brushes? In a little while I'm going to show you a photograph of my paint pot in a little while with 10 brushes sticking in it. Well, one of the reasons I use so many is because I don't want to, there I'm rolling again, I don't want to use the same brush over and over and over and over, or it'll get boring. People will be able to tell that I use the same brush, and that means repetitiveness. Got it? So I'll pick up a different brush fairly frequently so it creates a different kind of line. I haven't said this yet. This is a very important principle. One of the reasons that I do my underpainting in such a fast, loose, spontaneous, seizure-like manner, one of the reasons is because I want to create sufficient chaos, sufficient texture in the underpainting so that when it comes time to do the overpainting, which is what I'm doing right now, I will have plenty of stuff to respond to. So for instance, if you look at, this is the base of the column, the base of the monument. See that kind of red, orange, peachy colored swoosh that points up at about 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, that angle? I didn't do that on purpose. That just is a result of, you know, my spasmodic underpainting. I often say to my students, I'm not smart enough to do good painting, but I'm smart enough to leave good painting when I see it. And that little swoosh, that little mark is beautiful. I'm not about to wipe that off. It gives character, texture, interest, and so forth. I say to my students often, we don't care if you can draw the thing. What we care is what do you do to the thing. That's what's interesting. More palette knife work here. Again, anything that can be rendered with panache, anything that can be rendered fairly quickly without over belaboring it is legal. And again, more sgraffito. Why? Why is that legal? Because it's not belabored. It's done fairly well. And then I look like I'm belaboring it. No, I did 2 lines here. I thought I was going over the same one for the 3rd time. It wasn't. It was 2 or 3 different lines. So I think I'm still following my own advice. One of the things I enjoy about teaching painting is it forces me to put into language, forces me to put into words the principles of good painting, and that keeps the principles in the forefront of my own mind. So I'm more inclined to remember the good paintings when I do some teaching. Here again, using my new favorite palette knife, and here's a different palette knife. I have a whole bucket full of palette knives too, 25 or so of them. Why? Because they're all a different shape. You never know when you're going to want. Here's something kind of funny. You know what I never use my palette knives for? My palette. I never use my palette knives for mixing paint on the palette, which is ostensibly the reason for which they were invented. But I never use them to mix paint. I mix paint with my brushes, and I use the palette knives just to paint with. Just a word about cleaning my brushes. I see a lot of student painters being very stingy with their brush cleaner. It just doesn't pay. Buy a fairly decent size can. I love the ones that have the airtight clamp down lids, because you can take them out with you and so on and so forth. They're kind of pricey, at least in my estimation, but it's one of those pricey art tools that is very much worth the price. The ones with clamp down lids. And get one, if you don't have any, get one that's, you know, a quart size. Don't mess around with the little 8-ounce things. Those are just, you're just trying to save money and you're going to waste more money. Anyway, so you get a big bucket, and your brush cleaner should not be turpentine. Of course, that's way out of date. It's poisonous, toxic. You don't want to be breathing. It smells bad. You don't want to be using that stuff. Even odorless paint thinner from the drugstore. Drugstore? Wrong store. Odorless paint thinner from the hardware store is really not good for your brushes, and it will cause the fibers. If you use synthetic brushes, it'll cause the fibers to curl up. So don't use that either. You're going to have to, spraying for the big bucks, you're going to have to pay more money for odorless terpenoid or Gamsol or Sans Odor. Those are 3 different products: odorless terpenoid, Gamsol, or Sans Odor. 3 different manufacturers. I don't even remember who makes what. And while I'm on this subject, I'll tell you that the best brush cleaner that I've found is actually terpenoid natural. Comes in a smaller can and is even more expensive than the regular can of terpenoid. By the way, I buy terpenoid by the gallon. Don't even mess with the small stuff if you're going to be a painter. Don't even mess with it. But the terpenoid natural is quite expensive, but here's what I've discovered. You ready for a good trick, money-saving trick? Buy terpenoid, regular odorless terpenoid. That's like maybe $25 a gallon, something like that. And then buy a quart of terpenoid natural. It has sort of a citrusy smell. In fact, there are other citrus brush cleaners that are very good. And you can actually add a little bit of the terpenoid natural to your odorless terpenoid. Am I confusing you to death? Add the expensive stuff to the cheaper stuff, and it still retains the properties of the expensive stuff. Get it? So that's what I'm doing these days. I used to have a problem with paint caking up on the sides of my bucket, but I don't have that problem anymore because the terpenoid natural really strips it down to bare, clean metal. It doesn't let paint build up. Now, most of my painting process in this final stage, I'm in the final stage. Like the first stage was all those layers of acrylic, then I did some drawing, then I did some local color, then do you remember? The final stage is mostly opaque, light color. But that doesn't mean I can't come back periodically with dark colors and render some dark things. Here I'm doing the windows on the lowest floor. But this gives me a good opportunity to point up one of the most important principles in oil painting, and tragically not terribly well known. It's tragic. Anyway, it is this. You get dark with transparent colors and light. Here I'm doing some final adjusting, making sure that my image is really horizontal. You get dark with transparent colors and light with opaque. Got it? Mud comes from trying to make something dark, but not too dark, so you add a little bit of white to it so it's not too dark. That is an erroneous impulse. The way to get dark is by acting like a watercolor painter. And you get transparent by using a medium, of course. And I showed you earlier, my favorite medium at the moment is liquid, although there are many other good. Liquid helps the paint to dry fast, and of course I like that because I want it to be dry tomorrow so I can possibly come back and hit it a third day, or a second day, I mean. So dark with transparent, repeat after me students, dark with transparents, light with opaques. Mud comes from trying to make a dark color with white in it. Now how illogical is that? Dark color with white in it. That's just, if you can remember that. I could go on and on and on. I've already gone on and on, haven't I? I could go on and on about why I am bonkers about transparent color. That is one of the chief characteristics of my painting technique, is that I'm a huge believer and practitioner of transparent color. Now here's a detail I wanted to show you. Remember, that's just an orange blob that represents a tree with fall foliage, and I just give a hint of the eave, the shape of the building behind it. Same thing here. I didn't draw that green pillar, I just painted to the left and the right of it and left the pillar as the negative space in between. And there's that little swoosh I was talking about earlier. Do you see that?